What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Blue River Bow Hunting Podcast, episode 126. Dylan, what's going on, dude?
Buddy, up here, if you can break it, I've broke it this week. That's for sure, man. It feels like everything I've touched is turned to dust here.
Yeah, that's no fun, man. Especially with your tractor, and as much as you do with the tractor and all the moving parts that go with it, and for it to, break some stuff, and then you have some, bad luck with parts and all that kind of stuff. It can make for a real frustrating situation.
The only day I clean my truck out's the day before I go fix it, and I had threw the tractor bracket in the passenger seat and went Saturday and accidentally threw it away. So it's been one thing after another, and we can't get the cab tractor back into those food plots because of the glass on it. So I'm just, man, I'm overnighting that bracket so that I can get it all put back together. But uh, I'm I'm ready to hunt, man. It's
Hey,
stressing me out.
next Friday, brother, we'll be in a stand.
Yep, I'm
I'm
looking
ready for
forward
it
to
for
it.
sure. But this week we get Cade Clemons on from Louisiana. What's going on, dude?
Oh, not too much, man. Just glad to be here. Got out of the woods a little bit ago. Just doing some miscellaneous stuff, scouting, and threw out a couple trail cameras. But yeah, it's coming up quick for y'all in Tennessee, huh?
Yeah, yeah, to be here next week. So I'm excited. I'm hoping this weather kind of stays like it has been. We've got a
Right.
small window of cool weather. We've had zero rain for the past 3 weeks, so I'm sure it's going to rain next weekend. You can kind of count on that. But hey, I'll pop a ground blind up and set for you.
Right.
Hey, I never even thought about that. I'm glad you said that. I'll put that into my list to going forward. But we both had instances where we got cold fronts
Yeah,
a couple weeks ago or whatever, and we both had major movement on our cameras and during that cold front. So it's not as cold as that front, obviously, but going from 96, 97 degrees down to the low 80s, that's going to be tremendous. Hopefully for that hunt, and hopefully be able to get it done. I know you got some real nice bucks down there, so hopefully
yeah,
somebody gets a shot on one down there.
I think so.
Right on. Well, Kate, introduce yourself for somebody that doesn't know you, bud.
Well, just grew up hunting in Louisiana, Mississippi, and South Arkansas. Kind of stuck to that core area most of my life. I've gone out of that area a few times, mostly doing duck hunts, goose hunts, and then like I would be scouting while I was up in the Midwest, kind of dropping some pins on some deer stuff. So when I got the time and the money to be able to do that, I could kind of run up there and maybe dive into some public and stuff. Um, but like I said, mostly it's just been sticking to the South, and that's been my core area. And what I do now is I'm just a content creator. I run 10 social media accounts for GSM Outdoors. And then I have a lot of other partnerships outside of that I create content for them as well. But I love it. Yeah.
What's exactly is a social media manager? Like, what is it what's that consist of daily?
Right. Yeah. So, wake up, run through everything that I guess run through each account, check and see what people are commenting, things like that. Reposting stories that you've been tagged in that you feel are quality enough to be reposted. Maybe accepting a collaboration here if that's something that it's really up to my discretion on that. But it's just whether or not we want to collaborate with this brand or not, or maybe some big partner has said we've set up a collaboration that goes out at 12 o'clock, be ready for that. Um, just getting post up, just interacting with the community, and just being able to respond quickly, but still, also I'm creating content myself at the same time, filling the gaps in areas where it needs to be filled. I'm kind of working into taking over like um, I guess the face of Evolved Food Plot Seed, if you want to call it that. And so that's been pretty time consuming lately. We've been doing a lot of YouTube videos, and I'm kind of been like a one man show on that as far as doing some pretty serious editing on that. And then other than that, it's nothing too crazy, but it's more than you'd think, when you just think about somebody that runs a social media account. But especially with as many as that I keep up with, it very time consuming. But
Oh, I bet. I run just the Blue River stuff. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, blah blah blah. I can only imagine doing
Yeah.
that for 10 different companies because
right.
I find, I wouldn't say hard. I find it difficult sometimes in certain times of the year, looking for a creative idea that somebody hasn't already done, or maybe you saw something that you kind of liked, but you're going to do it your own little way. Like, how do you come up with that stuff almost on a daily basis in creating that stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, I'd say most of the stuff is provided. Most of the content's provided in a folder through some of our partners and stuff, and I may tweak it. I may put a little phrase over the like overlay over the picture, or just tweak it a little bit, But I'd say most of the time I'm just going in and doing like a carousel or a reel and just making sure it's high quality and it's up to standard of what we want to be posting. And that's also time consuming and scheduling things out. Just because you want to make sure you're representing the brand good when you're putting stuff out there. And but yeah, as far as what I create, it's definitely tough to stay up to date, keep up with the grind. But usually, if I'm putting the time into it, it's going to come out the way that I want it. It may take sometimes longer than others, but usually it's going to get there if I keep grinding on it.
So how did you come into that position? Like, how does one take on that role? Because I feel like that's kind of a hand selected, almost like
Right.
molded position that you have to really trust somebody for.
Right. So, well, before I took this job, I was working for the Pursuit Channel. I was actually flying on private jets all across the United States, filming big people like Donald Trump Jr.
That's
I went
insane.
on like 5 hunts with him. It was some cool stuff, man, and just a bunch of big singers and stuff, and that was fun. But being able to have the time allotted to be back home, being around, the things that I love more than being off filming people. I mean, like I said, that's such a cool thing to do, but like in the longevity of, working, that's something that I kind of wanted to get away from. And I was also editing a lot of episodes that were almost too time consuming, that I was catching myself doing outside of hours that I was supposed to be working. And so it was kind of keeping me away from being like really where I wanted to be mentally, as
Yeah.
far as being able to get locked in for deer and ducks and turkeys or whatever time of year it was. And so anyway, I was doing that for X amount of time. And then, GSM reached out to me, and, they have I don't really know necessarily, but I think it's one of the biggest conglomerates in the United States. I want to say we own, roughly 45-ish brands between fishing, hunting, and cutlery. And then there's a bunch of things just for shooting in general, But yeah, I mean, that kind of is a short summary of how we got there. But yeah, the guy reached out to me, and we just kind of worked it out. I did some interviews and ended it there. So
We had Philip Vanderpool on last week talking deer hunting and kind of the evolution of that hunting industry of, the produced hunts going more towards the digital side. What's
right.
your thoughts? Because, like, you're in the digital side, and it sounds like you're pretty deep into the digital side, editing, production hunts and stuff like that. Like, do you
Right.
see it going anywhere else sooner than later? Or do you think that we're on this digital track for a while?
Yeah, I mean, I see us definitely getting away from TV and being a lot more digital. I don't know that streaming TV will ever recover as far as what we used to grow up watching. It's kind of a thing. I don't know. exactly how that I just don't know how they'd be able to get back to that level of people just being able to enjoy it the same, because you have so many more options with just being able to get on YouTube and just go watch somebody or any other streaming platform, and it's so much more freedom, I guess, versus 9 o'clock at X time, your guy comes on, and if you miss it and don't record it, I mean, maybe catch you next week on that same episode or whatever, versus being able to search somebody up and there it is right there, and you can rewatch it however many times you want and comment on it or whatever. So.
Yeah.
It's wild. I've since I've had that conversation with him about that, I've asked other people the same question. We were sitting in my garage this weekend consuming deer hunts on YouTube and stuff, and it was crazy because it would go from somebody that has a great personality, right? Just not exactly the high standard quality of production, editing values, and it's still a great episode to watch. And then I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to show you one that is the cat's ass here. So I've turned on a Seek One episode because we had talked about him a little bit with Philip, and I'm like, this is the Outdoor Channel, but on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like, it's just that high of a quality. The story goes well. He mixes great with talking to the camera, with voiceovers, and like he just does it all well and puts it all together well. Is there any particular guy you like watching on the YouTube?
Particular, that's tough for me to say. I mean, I love if you can name them, I probably enjoy watching them.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Seek One, obviously top tier right now. But as far as picking one out in particular, it's kind of tough for me to say. But I do enjoy it. Sometimes I try to step back a little bit because I'm into it so much all the time and consuming so much. I'm like, I got to take a break for a couple of days, and then so I can actually enjoy it versus being like too consumed with. I don't think there's anything what I would call is too much hunting, but as far as the digital side of it, like if I'm outdoors, there's no way I could ever be outdoors too much or be hunting too much, I don't think. But as far as consuming it, through my eyes and ears and just being too overwhelmed by dealing with it 24/7, I definitely think there is a limit on that.
Yeah, for sure.
But
I catch myself watching way too much sometimes. I'm like, I just need to put this phone down and actually go do something.
right, yep.
What's your busy seasons when it comes to that? Is there one that's more busier than the other, or is it pretty much all equal when it comes to actually putting all that stuff together?
I'd say honestly, right now, probably leading up to deer season, and that's also when a lot of my brands are trying to make the most sales. So, I mean, in the end, that's kind of what that leads to, is just getting more people on websites, getting more people interested in the brand, making sure people see the brand in a good light, which, long term, that just leads to more views and sales, I guess is what you would really call it in the end goal. But yeah, I mean, right now it's rolling good. So I'm pretty consumed. I still find plenty of time to get out there. So it's not, like I said, what I'm doing now, it's not time consuming nearly as much as where I was at the Pursuit channel. And like I said, it was a great gig. I just really enjoy what I'm doing now for myself, and to be able to, be around, the people that I love and doing what I love outside, all that good stuff. So,
hunting Louisiana. Let's talk about deer hunting in Louisiana. Talk about like some of the terrain that you're hunting, like properties, setups, that kind of stuff. Lay it out a little bit, like property wise, kind of like what you got going on.
Yeah, so I live in Northwest Louisiana, and like I think when people think of Louisiana, they just think of straight swamps, and it's just maybe some cypress trees and some odd terrain and low-lying areas. Well, actually, Northwest Louisiana, where I do live and I grew up, it's really like rolling hills. There's some, I would say the terrain is similar to like South Central Arkansas. It's some rolling hills, but I mean, really deep terrains. It's not like rolling hills in the Midwest or anything like that. It's just like more ravine type stuff, more mature hardwood timber that's held by like rocky iron ore ground. Pretty terrible soil overall. It's very rocky in Northwest Louisiana. A lot of pines, kind of a mixture of pine plantations and hardwoods, pretty much. I mean, there are a few swamps. There's some bottoms that connect to a bunch of bayous and it'll flood out, and those are low lying areas they're definitely swamps. But as far as you move over to northeast Louisiana, as soon as you get past the Ouachita River, and I mean, if there was no trees, I think you could see as far as the eye could see in any direction. There's no hills. I mean, really, the only hills are just the Indian mounds over there. That's where one of the oldest Indian tribes, they made all those mounds over there. It's pretty cool history, but that's where that's where I do most of my hunting. Is on the Mississippi River, and it's like I said, it's just flat ground, and we do a lot of hunting inside the levee. So basically, you've got the big levee, and then inside there are thousands of acres that a lot of people don't even realize that there's that land that's inside of the floodplain, and that's just prime stuff over there. But
yeah, river bottoms. That's now you're talking my business now, but
yeah.
I love that. I love hunting them river bottoms, and I don't get to hunt a big river like the Mississippi, but
Right.
obviously Blue River. I hunt some of the bottoms on that, and
Absolutely.
Dylan got to come hunt a portion of the Little Blue River last year, and we were talking about it. Last when we did a podcast with Southeastern Bow Hunter or whatever it was the other night, talking a lot about it, but the way they cruise the river like that, it's just like a highway system for them, basically.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I mean, when you get to like central Louisiana and go south from there, I mean, it's pretty much all just flat, swampy areas at that point. Now, I've hunted some swamps in North Louisiana, but it just, when you go south, it's just nothing but that pretty much. I mean, there's some rice fields and some sugar cane planted down there, but as far as where most of the woods are, it's going to be, a couple inches of water to a couple feet of water, and then the deer are mostly going to just run those ridges. And I mean, I have buddies down there that they've shot deer while they're walking through 3 foot of water.
It's crazy.
So everything's almost by. They'll take a pirogue in. It's like a little kayak, and that's how they get around. They'll put the deer in there and drag them out a couple miles. So
that's wild.
Yeah.
What about like food in that ecosystem? What exactly are they eating on?
There's definitely some oaks down there, in certain areas. I mean, I think it depends how much high ground there really is. If there's a couple little ridges, and we're talking about ridges here, we're talking about like 3 or 4 foot of elevation. You talk about a ridge up in Tennessee that could be like 400 feet, but yeah, we're talking like 3 or 4 feet, just enough where the deer are not having to stand in water 24/7. And you go out in the middle of the swamp, and there might be a little knoll that comes off one of those ridges with just enough grassy bedding, and that might be where that big buck lays up right there year round, where he has water to his back, and he has pretty much everything to his advantage, because obviously if something's coming by water, he'll be able to hear it, be able to smell it. And a lot of people have success hunting like that. But as far as food, I guess on some of those ridges, there's some water oaks, and a lot of you're not going to really have any white oaks grow down there. It's just too swampy. But I know there's some water oaks, and there are some persimmon trees down there. I don't really hunt too much down that way, just because they just don't grow quite as big down there. But as far as, on the river, in the river bottoms where I hunt, I just usually hone in on persimmon trees and nuttalls. But that's what I enjoy hunting though.
What kind of dressing, like for like when you gear up, when I think of Louisiana, I think of it being like hot. The mosquito is going to carry you off,
Oh,
kind of
absolutely.
thing. And then I see obviously the quality of deer you're chasing, which I think Honey Break is in Louisiana, correct?
It is.
They
It's
do pretty good
actually
on deer.
yeah. So it's in like central Louisiana. It's not too far from the river, and so that area it grows some big deer. The one that like Tyler Jordan killed
Mhm.
was just, I mean, just once in a lifetime for sure. But that area is mostly CRP. It was some type of field at one time, ag fields, with it being in close proximity to the river. There's kind of good genes there already. And then they planted CRP, which is, I mean, are you pretty familiar with what CRP is?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Sure you are.
Yeah.
And it just got so thick down there over the years, man. And they have that whole place leased out to themselves and just grew. And they just kept getting bigger and bigger deer, man, every year, and just had the habitat for them. And I mean, they're just killing some absolute monsters. It's impressive. And there's some places like that in Northeast Louisiana. It's just you just don't see pieces of ground is that big, and so
Yeah.
obviously those deer get to roaming. People aren't as selective as they would be, up y'all's direction. I mean, I can tell you plenty of people that would still shoot spikes and 5 points. Where I'm letting 140-inch deer go, and it's just like I could show you the one last year on 80 acres. I was growing this deer since two, and I wanted to bet on him one more time. He was a 150-inch 8 point at 4.5, and I wanted to bet on him, and it was tough because he daylighted around probably 20 days in a row,
Oh.
and every other day he was there just all night long. Whether it be walking by a scrape or eating from some feed, he was in there, and I mean, of course, he bred a bunch of does on me. Got pictures of him breeding does, and I honestly wish I'd have gone there and just got some film of him, but I didn't want to bump him out because it was just like I said, it was just 80 acres of CRP that we own, and he ended up leaving. I got sick, and I had to get like surgery on my esophagus, and so um, I ran out of feed, and it was just about that time. Those last couple of does were going into estrus, and he left and ended up getting shot about a mile away, but.
Man.
Yeah, he was a hammer. I was hoping he'd make it one more year, but um, you can grow some big ones over there too.
Like we were talking about this the other night, like the age class and what people chase when it comes to a certain age class of deer. We've noticed a lot here in Indiana. Like you can even get a 2-year-old that's pushing 125, 130. That's just a stud of a young deer. And definitely needs another year. Could absolutely blow up into a mega giant being a 3-year-old. What's that kind of transition down there in the South age class? When do they really start putting
Right.
on the inches?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I like that one. So I would say that obviously it just depends on the area. Obviously, it depends on the deer, but for the most part, and when I tell you, about what I'm hunting, it's usually like the best of the best ground, just because of I've just had I've been able to have access to that just for so long, and we've just been able to pick some of the most prime stuff before it got so high as far as land goes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say around that 3.5 to 4.5, you'll see a big jump. You said some 2-year-olds, maybe even up to 125 or so in Indiana. We had a 3-year-old 8 point killed on us. I want to say it was 4 years ago, and it scored 138, which um, that was pretty big. That's probably kind of like top tier there. I
Mm-hmm.
would say for the most part, like your average deer about 3 years old. And I'm kind of gonna go. I'm gonna kind of break it down into two parts for the northwest side of the state and then the northeast, because it's just so different on age class, quality, when they hit that jump. and just habitat really. But so I would say in Northeast Louisiana, when you're talking about, we got some ag ground, river bottom type stuff, really good genetics just spread throughout. It's just, you still don't see that age class too often just because of the hunters that hunt the area. People are still have that mindset. I mean, obviously, it seems like every year it gets a hair better overall. And obviously, it just depends who your neighbors are. But I mean, as far as what I see on social media, I see what deer killed and how people are buying into that mindset that maybe if I let this deer go, he'll put on some more. So even if he's not going to shoot him, maybe this guy's daughter is going to kill him or whatever, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
And, but yeah, in Northeast Louisiana, I would say that 130 mark is kind of where, usually between 3 and 4 years old, if we're talking about a 8 or a 10 point, just his main frame. As far as Northwest Louisiana, man, dude, a stud at like 5 years old might be like, for 99% of people, like 120-inch deer.
Right.
And then I would say for mature deer in Northeast Louisiana, I would say what people would just consider a stud, big deer. I wouldn't say a giant, but just kind of that really good buck. A lot of people's biggest buck ever would be like 140. And people kill them bigger than that, obviously. But for the, other than that, it'd be the top 1% if you're killing something bigger than that. And that's kind of wraps that part of that up. But
So is Louisiana a bait state? And the reason I ask that is, me and you had this conversation kind of the other day on the phone when you called, but Tennessee's going to a bait state next year, and I'm hoping that with that being implemented, that our deer kind of get the pass more, because people are going to hold off on those smaller ones, waiting for the smarter buck or the bigger buck to, daylight or whatever on that food. So I'm hoping that it helps us grow bigger deer by giving people more of a hope and more patience. Is that something that you like? Is it always been a bait state there? Or did that progressively, do you see that happen as you guys become a bait state?
right, so yeah, we've always been a bait state, and one thing that I wish that our Department of Wildlife and Fisheries would do is, at the bare minimum, I wish they'd go in by area, because we have like 8 or 10 different areas throughout the state, just because the rut is different in so many different areas. Like it could be a whole month off in just a 20-mile difference. But we can talk
Wow.
about that in a little bit. But
That's crazy. I'll bring that
it
back up.
is, yeah, no, it's pretty cool. But anyway, back to what you were saying, man. I mean, I can see both sides of the story there, but at the same time, I wonder if those people are going to shoot that deer regardless,
Yeah.
if that's just going to make them see them more often, So that's kind of where it's like that fine line.
Yeah.
If they have the mindset, they might actually pass that deer if, you know, if they're just hunting the same spot over and over again, and they're on the top of this hill, and all those deer for years and years have just been cruising that bottom, and they didn't make an adjustment, and then they start feeding in that line that they've been hunting and bring those deer out of the bottom. For a guy that has, wasn't shooting anything big anyway, and he
Yeah.
doesn't have that mindset to watch deer, may make it worse. But for the guy that's kind of, getting into it, wants to kind of fit in with the way things are moving and start passing on some deer, and still shoot what makes him happy, but kind of work towards killing mature deer. I think that could be a great thing, because he'll see some deer that get him excited, get him thinking, okay, that's a great looking deer. Maybe if I hold out, something bigger will come through, or say the following year, if those deer live on me, they're going to be mature or more mature, So.
Yeah.
What about like as far as your tags and stuff go? How many bucks are you allowed in Louisiana?
You killed three bucks and 3 does.
That's what I was going to say with Dylan, like being able to shoot 2 in Tennessee with the bait state. You think that might take it down to 1 maybe, and like
Right.
they would be less have less of that opportunity to be like, well, I only got 1 tag. I was going to shoot this basket rack this morning, but I might let him go for a couple more weeks and see what else I see, especially if they're baiting, and they should be able to know a little bit of what they got in there. But I guess, when the rut does come around, sometimes you get those bucks that, that didn't even know were there,
That, and then I've heard of people being like, yeah, because our November and early December is lows maybe in the 20s, high 20s, and then the highs, 50. So it's pretty moderate is considering. But you get into late December. One morning I climbed the tree and it was 8 degrees without the wind factor. And I've heard people say, hey, I let this buck walk twice, but I seen the forecast next week. It's just getting colder. I'm done with it, and they're going to shoot him anyway, kind of thing, So it's kind of like his time was ticking. Those guys are just filling freezers or whatever they're doing. But I told a guy I work with the other day, he was telling me, he's like, I'll just shoot a bunch of doe, or I'll shoot the first buck I see or a bunch of doe. I'm like, well, a bigger buck is going to have more meat on it because he's bigger, so you might as well hold off for the bigger one. But yeah, I think it's the weather plays a factor, and then if you go to 1 tag, the guys are still going to shoot as many as they do some nights. They still bust them pretty regularly up here, just running around, scoping them at nighttime. That's one thing I worry about with my farms. Is because I do have some major pasture hay fields around me that they do cross the road, and I try to keep them off of it. So that's why I went so crazy with habitat management here, like bedding, food, water. And as a buck gets older, his core gets smaller. And I've really tried to not pressure this farm. And when we first moved in here, man, I done good to see a 5 point, a basket rat 6. And now with all the food plots, all the bedding, the pressure that's not on them, I only have 1 buck under probably 100 inches, like consistently run out of like 8 or 9 bucks. They're, I don't know, 115 to 135 in that range as of right now. But I'm sure there's another one lurking that's kind of. I've had one on camera 2 or 3 times. He won't ever come into the camera.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
He stays right on the edge of the buffer zone, the edges I let grow up. So he's never fully in the food plot. He's never fully in the open woods. He stays in that 20-yard. But you'll catch him, and I mean he's outside his ears. He's probably 20-something inches wide. He's massive, and I know he's not a buck I have because I have so many pictures of him. So he's just so elusive. He won't come to the corn. He won't come to mineral. As I was feeding him, we're not feeding him now just because we got to be up 14 days before. But man, he's so smart, and that's how he's using this whole property. He's using these transitions that I've built, and I've seen him once or twice. I think I seen him once, maybe twice when I was on the tractor, but he never comes out of those hard edges, And it's just so cool to see in 2 to 3 years the progression that I've went from like you done good to see basket rack to now it's like, okay, we can really be picky. In 2 years, this place is going to be insane if we can keep them safe. So that's like my thing. And I know some of your farms, you're probably the same way. You're trying to hold them in and not necessarily to kill them yourself, but to make sure that they're getting to their full potential. Because Tennessee's a lot like you, man. 3.5, 4-year-old. That's when they really tend to put the size on.
Yeah, absolutely. We so I think it was 2019 was a really bad flood for us on the river, and it just, I mean, floods are so widespread on the Mississippi River. They can last up for 6 or 7 or 8 months of being like,
wow,
these deer habitat being like 10 feet underwater for that long. So like they've got to be out in the wide open, just vulnerable, in these fields, because usually at the time when the flood happens, a lot of those crops haven't grown up yet, so they can't really go hide out in those crops yet. And so it can be so stressful on them. And a lot of deer might even try to go back in there. And a lot of times they'll start swimming and it'll just, they might swim until they just die. I mean, it's happened. And we lost a lot of deer and just pretty much wiped out a lot of our herd in 2019. And so that following year, there were, plenty of does that ended up having fawns. But between that time and now, we've just had a few, decent years as far as age class. We've noticed our age class is really, really young. I think it either pushed out or just wiped out a bunch of those really old deer. And so this year and next year and hopefully the next few years, because we haven't had a flood that severe, um, we're just now seeing those 4 and 5 year old deer, or I guess the 3 and 4 year old deer now hit 5 and 6. And so it's starting to look really good the direction that we're headed now. But like I've got some jam up deer on camera this year that are just 4, and like I've got some great 5 year olds too. But that 4 year old class for sure is just crazy, and we're letting all of those go this year, and next year should be something special, I think. So
Let's talk about your rut. You kind of mentioned it a second ago. Here in Indiana, like my peak rut is like the 14th of November, and that week leading into Thanksgiving, it usually dies off after Thanksgiving. When's that time period there in Louisiana?
right. So for the furthest northwest corner of the state, it's kind of on par with South Arkansas, and that can range from about like right early November, you may say like the 3rd through, like, let's just say through Thanksgiving. It's a really good kind of comparison. And then you move a little bit more south, maybe just 15 or 20 miles, and you're looking at like it might start on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And then you go another 20 miles, southeast, you jump over the interstate, and their rut doesn't start until Christmas. And then, yeah, and then you go way down in South Louisiana, and there's a few places in the west part of the state, and they rut, in like October, and then uh, same distance south, but you just move over east, and their rut's not till February. It doesn't start until February, and so a lot of times, a lot of people miss the rut because they extended their season till February 15th. But if you don't catch them those first couple of days, your season ends. And so, but where I typically hunt, I would say in Northwest, I'd say about Thanksgiving, and you'll see some relapses of does that didn't get bred the first cycle. You'll see them chase, up to about Christmas Day. You go over to Northeast Louisiana, and I do a lot of public land stuff over that way. Peak, I would have to say January 6th, like just absolute peak, all out, just full throttle, and then leading into lockdown and all that good jazz. Just that's usually about that. But man, I see them breed. So like I said, when I hunt the river bottoms, this is a big property. It's like 6,400 ish acres. It's obviously, it's not just us on there. It's spread out with a group of people, but there's so many deer. I see them chase sometimes up to March over there.
Wow.
I'll be getting ready to start shed hunting, and I'll see bucks still chasing does, pushing does, because the number of deer is just like out of this world. We kill around 200 does off that property every year.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
Yeah, we put it to the does. Usually kill about 15 to 20 bucks, but just to keep the numbers in check, But.
Yeah, for sure. You said that you hit public land and stuff, and you're talking about hunting 6,400 acres. What's your setup? Like mobile wise, are you in like a climber, a saddle? What is it that you like using?
I've been using just like this little hang on. It's just like a little micro set, but
Yeah.
I recently partnered up with Buzzard Roost saddles,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's what I'll be running this year.
Nice.
I've been testing it out lately, and I like it. It's pretty sick. But yeah, before that, that was mainly what I did. Just enough to put my butt on if I wanted to sit down, and just enough to hold my feet, and
Yeah.
that was about it. I was running like 3 latitude sticks.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I love the lightweight lock on setup. Sometimes what deters me from it most of the time is the time,
right,
right? Like I usually got to leave my backpack on the ground if I'm hanging a lock on. With the saddle, I still got my backpack on because
right,
my platform's still in my backpack, and I can just pull that right over there. But I find myself, and maybe it's because I like to tinker with setups and stuff like that.
right.
I find myself trying to get lighter and lighter, which I'm sure everybody tries to do, right? Lighter sticks, lighter platform, and all that jazz, and then carrying camera stuff in there, man. Some of them times going into a place, my backpack's pretty heavy.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't ever hunt without my camera, and I've got a pretty heavy setup too. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, no, I love it. I was man, I was about a day off of a 174 last year on public over there. And,
Wow.
I saw him 3 times and just didn't quite get the move on him quick enough. So somebody shot him with a crossbow in the butt.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and he didn't run, but he didn't run but like 75 yards either. I wish they'd ban crossbows on that place or make them, for a certain age, because that's the biggest thing is the people that crossbow hunt over there end up killing most of the deer. I think if you did archery as far as compound or traditional, I think it would change just that whole area of public. But still some big deer around. You need to find them. I mean, it's one of the most pressured places in the South United States. So.
Talk about your camera setup. I mean, you're doing some really good content that comes out of that stuff. Talk about camera and camera arm and all that sort of situation. What you got rolling with?
Sure. So I forgot which fourth arrow it is, but I have one of the heavier ones just because I usually like to run a 70 to 200 lens. Excuse my dog in there.
Oh, you're fine, buddy.
Anyway, no, I usually like to run a 70 to 200 lens or 200 to 600, depending on what I'm hunting. Mostly 99% of the time I'm using that 70 to 200, but I run, my main is a Sony A1. This year I'm gonna probably change up my secondary because I sold my A7 IV, Sony A7 IV that I was using for my secondary. And I really like that, but I want to move to something just a hair lighter. I'm gonna try that new DJI Osmo 360, and that way when I go back, doing everything solo, I can make sure I don't miss anything with that, and being able to go back and kind of just alter that post production as far as with it being a 360 camera, I can tweak it and zoom in however I need to. But yeah, that's mostly what I'll do. And then if I'm hunting a place where I'm not having to be quite as mobile, I'll bring maybe another GoPro or something just small. I've just got a couple little smaller cameras like that, and I might mount it just to have a third angle of maybe more towards myself or maybe more towards the deer where I think he's going to come out, depending on the situation, of course. So.
Right. I catch myself, and I was thinking about this other day. We talked to our buddy John Ruiz about filming and producing and stuff all the time, and I caught myself. I'd go back and look at some of my older stuff, and I caught myself doing an interview on I have the 360 version of a GoPro.
Right.
I'm doing the interview on that, and the audio isn't that great on those cameras. So
right.
I'm gonna try not to do as much talking from that shoulder up on camera as much anymore, because I'm trying to get away from that and be more of a storyteller. And
Right.
I'm going to start doing my interview on my big camera. I'm just going to turn it all the way around, or turn it
Yeah.
around and flip the lens over where I can see myself. And
Right.
obviously, with having a Rode mic on it compared to that little bitty GoPro, the audio is going to be incredible.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. As long as you can get yourself in focus, there's nothing wrong with that. Because I mean, that's about the only thing that I struggle with my 7200 is that 70 millimeter is still just a little tight as far as trying to turn that camera arm around to be just on my face. Like I'll be leaning back in the stand like this. I'm like, no, that ain't gonna work. So
Oh, that's awesome. Talk about some of the heritage and like tradition of Louisiana deer hunting. We ask people from all over the country that come on and talk, and they kind of always give us like a state heritage type of story or anything like that.
right. Well, I would say when you think about Louisiana, it wouldn't be completely what I hunt. So I would think of more like the heritage of it would be like the South Louisiana, the Cajuns and the Creoles, and the way that people just grew up, using the land, and they still believe that. And like I said, that's nothing against people that like to go out and shoot deer for meat. I shoot does for meat. I shoot plenty of them. Now, do I think that you should go shoot a 2-year-old just because you want meat? I mean, no, not really. I think you can go shoot some does, or if you put in the time for a mature buck, you get a whole lot more meat off of that buck than you would a deer that's just a little bit bigger than a dog down there. But as far as the heritage, though, I would say it's just swampy tradition of just getting out there in the thick of it and being able to find deer in those swamps and go in with the Piro, like I said, which is just like a type of kayak. It's actually what the Indians carved back in the day. I think that's why it's actually called that. And they'd carve them just out of a old tree, and they'd slip around and do the same thing that a lot of people try to do today. And which, when you get that far south, I feel like most people are meat hunters. You'll have a select few that are really good at what they do and can kill big bucks down there still. But I would say a lot of people are just meat hunters, and they want to go out and just get after it and bring back a deer and take a picture dragging it through 3 feet of water, because that's just it's something you don't see in 90% of the United States. You might see it in South Florida, but that's really the only thing I can compare it to, that far south. But for sure.
What about like your 2025 schedule? Are you just going to be hunting Louisiana, or are you hitting any other states?
So I'm gonna try to hit Louisiana, Mississippi, Velvet. I've got a couple spots set up in Arkansas already with some good deer. I'm probably gonna skip out on the Velvet and just wait for late season there. But I am gonna go to Kentucky this year with a buddy up there, and I'm gonna try to get one early. So like hopefully, the beginning of next month, right when it kicks off.
Yep.
I'm going to try to go up there and see if we can't find like maybe a 140, 145, a really good deer, and just kind of get my feet wet up that way. Never hunted Kentucky, so that should be fun. But as far as anything else goes, it might just be spur of the moment. Like, could potentially run over to Oklahoma. I've thought about making a trip up there, but that's really about it. I've got some really good deer, like some studs in Louisiana this year that I'm trying to key in on, and hopefully, I don't know necessarily how much I believe in killing 3 bucks in one state, but it's legal right now, and I've got 3 that are like wall hangers and on different properties, so it's not like I'm wiping out one property. I've got so much stuff in North Louisiana. I could put all of you and 10 of your buddies on properties, and we would all be hunting different deer. and good ones too. But but as far as I'm just gonna mainly be keying in on those while I'm hopping around. Maybe for a week trip here or a week trip there type thing. So
Yeah.
hopefully producing some cool content in between.
Three giants in 1 year. That sounds like a Dylan Albright season last year.
Sounds like a taxidermy deal.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's just the ones I know about. So hopefully, if something happens, I'm not going to say I'm going to kill any of those, but hopefully it goes the way I want to, and I can at least get one or two of them. I'd be more than happy with that. But there's one I'm really locked in on right now. I got his sheds behind me from last year. I let him go. He broke off half of his beam, and another thing is I found these sheds in the piney woods, and honestly, dude, people will look their whole lives and like never find a deer. I mean, never find sheds hardly in that terrain because it's like there's not much. The only food source that you'll find, is really just like, acorns and stuff, acorns, however you want to say it. Most people
Right.
don't say it like that, but anyways, that's really about as far as you'll get other than food plots, and there's just no food plots in that area. So I was kind of finding that in some bedding and just some transition zones, and I was excited to find those. But because I could go over to the river bottoms and find 20, 25 sheds in one day. If nobody's already gone through there, I can put in some miles just between our big food plots, and I know where they're going to come from there. I've got that property figured out. I have for years, but it's just one of those things you just kind of learn over time. But hopefully I can key in on this buck behind me. I've sent Dylan a few pictures. He's pretty big. So I've got him on about 5 different cameras on trails right now. So I've got him pretty dialed up. Hopefully he'll continue that. I mean, he's probably going to throw me a curveball and he ends up shedding about September 15th. That's what they're going to shed about. A lot of those bigger deer that are taking longer to grow about that time in Northwest Louisiana. But, so bow season opens October 1st, but over in Northeast Louisiana where I hunt in the river bottoms, man, it's like some deer are going to shed right there, shed velvet right before October, but some of them will hold it out till, October 5th, 6th. Some guys have killed them all the way up to the 10th over there. But I just find that cool how some deer, depending on where you're at, are so different. Like I could name a few on this one particular property. It's a whole bachelor group, and they shed like the beginning of August. Like,
wow.
Right. I don't even have a camera out there right now, but if I went and put one out, I'd be willing to bet they're already in the process or have already shed their velvet.
Wow.
Yep.
That's insane. I've never heard of any bucks shedding that early. Normally here it's like right around like that Labor Day weekend. I can remember me and Ryan took the old ladies on a trip up to Michigan Labor Day weekend a few years back, and on the way up there, I got a notification on one of the big ones that we were chasing. He went hard horn like that night on my drive up there, and I'm like freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, he's hard horned. He's still a stud,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You're talking about river bottoms and transitions and stuff that you were talking about. When you do go into setup, what exactly are you looking for, and where do you set up your stand locations, basically?
Right. So in those river bottoms in particular, it's kind of like I was talking earlier. Like when we see a ridge over there, it may be, 5 to 10 feet of elevation, and that's like maximum. And now I like to find something. So if we have a huge, destination food plot of, whatever it may be for that year, we kind of like rotate stuff, but it's just a mixture of winter wheat, oats, and say some purple top turnips, maybe some radishes in there or something like that. I'm not really going to hunt over that. I might late season, like very, very late season, come January. But if it's like, and I would say like late January, but if it's kind of that early rut, or I guess it honestly depends whether it's early season or if it's that rut phase. But if we're just talking about rut phase going in with like no cameras and just basing it off the land, I'm going to go around some of those food plots. And, if there's a waterway in between where I can kind of pinch them down in between that food plot, like there's a couple oxbows on the property, that cut off the river that at one time may have been the old river, it just changes over the years. And because, some of those oxbows are huge, they're about half the width of the actual Mississippi River. And so I don't know. I usually like to get around those to still be near water, but if you can get kind of on that bend where those deer have to walk around it anyway, or 9 times out of 10 are going to, and then obviously depending on where the bedding is, where the food is, if you could ever get in between some of that, or like one spot in particular that I can think of is this is within the bottom, and so it's basically it drops off from a big ridge into this bottom. You got an oxbow to the east, and then the river is even further east. But just south of that is a huge destination food plot, and so I'll kind of get in between where that bottom is. There's about a 2,000 acre cucklebird patch. I'm not sure you know what cucklebirds are.
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
So we got them, bad, and those deer just bed all in there. You might see 50, 60 deer come out of there at one time. And so I would like to get kind of in between that, the food plot, and then if I can get on that edge of that oxbow, so they're going to walk, work their way around that, most likely not crossing it. So, but that's where I would say as far as kind of the rut would go, just because I know so many deer are going to be bedded in there. So that's where the does are going to be. I'm going to look for the biggest trail, the most sign, but hopefully I'm, able to have some cameras out, kind of see what's going when I'm not in there. And if it's early season, I've got a set of about 10 or 11 persimmon trees in the middle of that cucklebird patch that I'm going to be locked in on. Depending on the wind, I'm going to hunt the crap out of it and see some big deer with I wouldn't even have to put out a lick of feed. If I pulled up and showed y'all some of the pictures of just the ground, I'm sitting there seeing on straight persimmons, like I said, just natural. I'm seeing, 20 to 30 deer every time I go in, and I can't see because of where I'm at. I can only see like 15 or 20 yards. And it's fun, man. I love hunting that natural stuff just as much as I like putting out some feed. But those deer play it differently. It's for the mature bucks do. Like if I am feeding and I can set up in between where he's coming from, to that feed, he's not going to be nearly as weary as if somebody that was hunting over a bait pile, he walks in there and he's like, man, this is what I feel like the deer is thinking at least, hey, I'm going to eat this food. I know it's really not natural, but I'm an animal and I'm going to eat it because I need it to survive, type thing. And he's going to be a little more jumpy, a little more weary versus if he's just naturally feeding on a little line of persimmons or a nice little line of white oaks or nuttalls. And that's just from my experience. Shooting a deer, moving towards something like that versus sitting still in a place where he feels a little bit vulnerable. You don't really see him drop as much. You don't see that kind of that tuck and roll, that you'll see a lot of times. I've seen them, freaking duck a crossbow. I was hunting with this kid one time, and this deer was like 15 yards, but he had already seen us, smelled us, but he just didn't, for whatever reason, didn't want to run. Just wanted to keep, eating from the feed pile. And he finally, got right. Things calmed down a little bit, and I told him to go ahead and shoot, and he did. And this deer, he ended up like grazing him, but I'm talking about, within that time frame, and you're thinking it's 15 yards. Hey, how? And it's one of the craziest tuck and rolls I've ever seen on a deer. He fell to the ground to not get hit by a crossbow. I don't know how fast it was moving, but it was moving pretty good. And
That's crazy.
I mean, yeah, really, it is.
You were talking about you talked about your cameras a few times. How many cameras are you're running?
Uh, it I think it just depends, kind of whether I'm, you know, locked in on a deer. Like right now, man, I've got, just for this one deer in particular, I've probably got 10 or 12 cameras spread out between maybe a 40 to 60 acre block. I mean, just fully locked in on this deer, trying to figure out what he's doing day and night. So when it comes that time that he does go to shed, if I can catch him, he might even be changing the bedding area by 100 yards, and hopefully I can figure that out and know where he's moving to and things like that. But I'd say, mostly, and this is in Northwest Louisiana, what I'm talking about. I like to. I really don't have very many out right now in the river bottoms, just because I feel like I kind of know, I'm gonna get them out here soon. I've got like probably 5 right now. I've still got a lot more to throw out, but I know a lot of what made it this year, and I've honestly already gone and seen a bunch of those deer. Like right at dark, they'll slip across the levee into some ag. That's the only bad part is that there is no agriculture inside, of this levee, and so I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Mississippi River levee, but I mean, it's so big, it's huge, and so the gap between the trees and the ag on the other side is, every bit of 100 to 150 yards of just wide open space. And they also have to walk over a 100-foot hill that's wide open, not a blade of grass taller than an inch, And so those mature bucks feel very vulnerable doing that. And so most of the time, they don't come out until night. But if you catch it right when nobody's driving around, maybe just a random midday, and it cooled off a hair earlier that day than it has the past, 4 or 5 days, they might come across early, and you can kind of see, maybe sit back with a spotting scope or, just some good binos and see what's out there. And I have a few times. There's some really good deer, but I would say over there on that property, I usually like to run about 20 to 25, um, which that's a big piece though. That's,
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not even covering. I'm covering it pretty good, but nothing. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that have similar acreages and run ridiculous amount of cameras. People that are crazy into it, but and as far as cameras, I'm not a guy to just totally rely on them, but I think it's a great tool if you have the land and the opportunity um, to do it.
Yeah, we've
'Cause-
talked about it several times on here, trying not to rely on those cameras.
Yeah.
right,
Dylan saying, I didn't want to go because they haven't been getting them on camera, and then sometimes you
right.
just gotta buckle down and get after it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll tell you one thing though that I really do like now. I've never used these before till this year. It's the Revolver 360 Pros that are like, you can see in every direction with these
Mm.
cameras.
That's
And
insane.
so in the mature hardwoods where it's like closed canopy, not much stuff's growing on the ground, and like I can go in like a little, old creek bottom that kind of meets like this. I can put it out, and I mean it can shoot up 50, 60, 70 yards to the woods, and pretty good clarity out to that far because it's kind of riding up the hill line versus going straight out. So that, that infrared flash does really well. And
Hmm.
I've had good results doing that lately just because I've been able to see deer that obviously would have walked behind the camera if I just
Yeah.
had stuck it on a tree or something. And um, that's kind of been something that I've been kind of amazed with. To be honest with you, I've never seen anything like that before until um, I've kind of partnered with Stealth Cam this year, and it's been pretty neat as far as
Yeah,
using those. But
that's cool, man. I don't know how some of these guys afford like the the cell cam bill at the end of the month.
Bill.
I got like 5 or something, and that's
Yeah.
way more than I really want to pay a
Oh,
month,
yeah.
on that. But some of these guys are running like 50 of them. It's like, dude, you
Right.
got to have a $300 a month cell cam bill.
Right. Yeah. My old one with Tacticam was every bit of like $300. I'm like,
Right.
and the bad part is I'd tell myself I'm gonna cut them off, for a certain part of the year, and I'd move them around for some other season coming up. I'd put them out for like early turkeys or something, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get the winter flock moving in or moving out or whatever, and just something dumb. I'd make an excuse about it, never cut them off for like 4 years, and I'm like, dude, I've spent so much money just to have these cameras sitting in the woods, and for a fraction of the time, they've probably half of them have been dead, and changing batteries and stuff. Honestly, batteries can run up more than that depending on what you do. I use strictly like 12-volt batteries now, so with just a cord, and that's kind of changed the game for me as far as being able to recharge them and just go stick them back out there. And even on some feed, man, I use some big 12-volt batteries, and they'll run, every bit of 4, 5, 6 months, never die one time.
That's awesome. I run the Moultries, and the one I got has a rechargeable battery. And last year I put it out. I got it on sale or something right around the beginning of bow season, and I put it out October 1st, and it lasted till like right into turkey season. I'm like, this is perfect. I never had to move it. I never had to mess with it.
Right.
It even got content for me walking into the stand, or me and Dylan pulling up to drag his buck out, and stuff like that. Like that's cool to me too, to not have to mess with it. And then on the other hand, I got some that will blow through 16 batteries in a matter of a month, which sucks,
Right. Yeah, no, Moultrie makes some great cameras as well. I've got some of their lithium packs, and but yeah, I think you do one of those little lithium cartridges too, and you just put it on a trail. That's the way to go.
Yeah.
I've got some of those for my stealth cams, and that's mostly what I've got set out on the trails. And then, like I said, if I'm gonna put it on a what I'd call like a bait station or a feed pile or whatever, I'm gonna use like that big 12-volt battery with a cord on it, and because it's gonna take 100 to 150 times the pictures that a trail is, because they're gonna sit there and eat it 24/7, whether it's on the feeder or on the ground or whatever, however you're feeding. If you don't want to go in there, I think that's the best way that I've seen to feed and run a camera that way, so.
For sure. Dylan, that's what you need. You need one of the big 12 volts in there.
I do. Yeah, I need to just put cameras out, man. I've got so many farms and so many spots, and dude, I run one camera, and I just run it on the home farm. But that comes back to me, like, I'm kind of like you. I've got so many options, and I'm the only one that leases or that can hunt any of my spots, so I don't have to worry about somebody else going in and shooting one. The element of surprise kind of keeps me going. And then, to hear you guys talk about the small platforms, y'all can have that crap too, buddy. I'm lugging in the biggest summit stand I can, and I want a stage when I'm up there, because I like to feel, I don't know, I'm just weird about that, because man, my legs were sore when I come home from
I'll say he didn't like
Indiana.
my XOP very much. He's like, this thing's tiny. He's up there like holding on to the branch.
Man, well, I wear a size 12 boot, right?
So do I.
My feet are big, and then I'm like trying to move around in the platforms. My toes are hanging off on the front, and I would like hold my strap, and I'd be like turned around talking to him, and I'm like, dude, this ain't for me, man. I was like, I'm bringing my climber down here. But I do like the idea of being a little bit more mobile or light, that way I can pack in more. But dude, when I've just got to where if I'm going in the woods now, I've hit this age where I'm not coming out until I'm like mentally I'm ready to come out. Like used to, I'd get hungry and come out, but as I've gotten older, I've realized, hey, that 9:30 to 2:30, that's prime time, and I'm not coming out.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've got a good video. As soon as I get finished editing it, it's time consuming because I'm trying to put a lot into it. It's like a personal video of the deer I killed last year, and I had so much footage of him from the previous year when he was 8 point, and I was recording. I was climbing up my lock on, and this was a set stand, not a mobile set, so it was kind of a big platform, like you were talking about. That is what I typically would like to hunt out of, like on properties where I've got set areas and set transitions that I already know I'm going to hunt. But anyways, so I'm going into that persimmon patch, and that year in particular, they were dropping like super, super late. I'd never seen them hold so many persimmons all the way into December, which was crazy. That was also the most persimmons I've ever seen that year on the trees. It was just like a great year for pretty much all nut trees, all persimmon trees, all fruit trees that I saw. It's the best year I've ever seen. And so they were still, dropping those into December, which when our rut was kind of getting close to starting at that time. And anyway, I'd been hunting this buck, but I didn't have him on camera, and I knew he was around though. And so I'm climbing up, and it's like 2:40-ish. I wanted to get there a little bit earlier, but this day in particular, I was just late. I think I'd left that morning at about 11, and took a little nap, got a little bit of lunch, and came back. And I was climbing up, and the wind was blowing like 50 miles an hour, just like the craziest gust that I'd ever seen for it to be just like a clear day. I mean, it was just plain ridiculous. And I'm climbing up, and at this spot in particular, there's bedding like all around me. A deer could be bedded within like 60 yards, and I wouldn't even know it until he stood up. And anyway, I'm almost at the top, and I see this like back just like glowing coming through the thicket, and I can't tell what it is until it's a pretty good sized body deer. And so I'm trying to scurry up the tree. And so I get up and I hang up my stuff. I got my rattling horns, and I hang those up, and I put them in the wrong spot because I was in such a hurry. Put them too close to my bow. And I looked up again, and I realized it was that big deer. And I just about started freaking out. Like I didn't even have my release on yet. And he's within 30 yards right now. And the wind is like covering me pretty good. And so I pull my bow over, and it catches on those rattling horns, and I'm talking about just whack, 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 whack. And I mean, I about just couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, yep, just ruined it. But the wind was blowing in my face, and with it blowing so hard, that deer never heard it. And I'm talking about if it would have been a calm evening, I think deer would have heard it 400 yards away. I'm talking about it was like the loudest thing, because after they started crashing like this, they also hit the metal deal I was hanging them on. It just couldn't have been any louder, And so I kept moving over. I finally got my release how I wanted it, and I get ready and I draw back, and he's at freaking 9 yards. Oof. And I got it all on video. He's at 9 yards, and this one limb from this persimmon tree. I didn't want to cut this limb because it's a fruit growing tree, and so I'd hate to make it produce less just for one shot opportunity spot when there's I can almost shoot anywhere else other than that. And of course, this deer stands right there for like 2 minutes and just is looking. And I ended up figuring out he was looking for a doe, and I think he had lost the scent on it. And so because the way he was bumping that nose, and he ends up putting his nose down, and this is like kind of right when I thought the rut was starting. Kind of a lot of those mature bucks were getting a little more kicked off. And but yeah, he cuts around me and keeps on moving, and I don't see him for a while. I ended up having like 4 or 5 more encounters, but it was, they weren't that close. It was more like 50 to 75 yards with, no shot window at all. But that is the one I killed last year. It should be a pretty good video when I finally put it all together. But nice. Yeah, that just made me think of that, and that was a pretty funny story for sure.
Now, when you drop this episode, where exactly can people find it?
So I'm definitely going to drop it on YouTube. If I come up with anywhere else to put it, I would definitely let the people know. But I'll probably pull some excerpts from it and maybe do a little quick, like 60-second spot for social media for, might put it on like YouTube shorts and then, obviously Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc. I might have to make a separate version for TikTok so it doesn't get
Right.
yeah.
I hate that. Why hasn't somebody come up with a hunting or outdoor version of TikTok? Like, I feel like somebody just needs to do that, and I feel like it would blow up.
Well,
It would. I feel like the algorithm is so special on there with this ability to just blow up that somebody would have to figure out how to use that same algorithm. Like, I don't know how that all works as far as figuring that out. If somebody could, I think it would be, just perfect. But I have noticed they've got a hair more lenient. Now, they'll still flag dang near anything they want to. But like, it was a couple years ago, man. And like, I could post me even having the thought of hunting, and I feel like they'd have banned me. I got banned on 4 accounts for posting hunting stuff.
Yeah, I found they were doing that to me, and I found a little loophole. And they take a lot of my stuff down, but then I've got this little loophole, and they've actually limited me to where I can't say it anymore. They took, how you can like appeal it or whatever, and I'm almost, dude, I could almost bet the house that I'm the reason they took the appeal box away because of how I would get them back, because I left them no choice but to put it back up. Can't tell you that on here, but I can tell you after.
We'll tell you that off air because we don't want nobody saying that. But
dude, it's wild and it works. Swear every time.
Really?
I just had to do it not long ago. Yeah, they know if I appeal a video, they have to put it back up now.
That's funny. I've appealed a bunch. I had one taken down, and it was so weird. Like, it got like 30,000 or 40,000 views. It was that. I don't know if you saw it or not. It's like that slow-mo of me just picking up the turkey. It was like really good quality and lighting. And like, they left it up there after I peeled it for so long. Like, it was like 3 or 4 months. And then like, out of the blue, like not even that long ago, just randomly is like violation. Like,
yeah,
I've had the same
like,
thing.
This video is not even getting any views or likes anymore. What's the point of, giving me a strike now? Like,
after the fact.
It's so dumb, but part of it. I mean,
that's definitely. I would love to have you back on in the springtime when we do Spring Thunder. I see a lot of your turkey content on TikTok and stuff, and man, you're killing it with the turkey stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I enjoyed it.
Well, buddy, it's been a heck of an episode. It's been fun talking to you. Tell everybody where they can find you at on socials, and shout out partners. Just do it for yourself, bud.
Sure, man. Y'all can find me at Cade Clemons on pretty much anything and everything you search up. Should be just like my name is. And yeah, that's about it. I post a lot of my partners on there. I'd hate to name them all right now, but hopefully y'all can go give me a follow and check out some of the stuff I'm creating. But yeah, no, I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, for sure. Dylan, you got anything before we close it out?
No, I'm just gonna go up and dream a deer and
All right.
hope nothing breaks between now and then, man. That's what I'm holding on to.
Hey, I'll tell you what, my dad says that I can tear up a steel ball bearing. So I'm in the same boat as you, man.
Yeah. Well, my dad said I break more than he can fix. So that's pretty good, It's just, dude, if you're working hard, man, you're gonna break stuff, and that's part of it. We don't baby anything here. Those little Kubotas, man, they get in and they go, and it's just par for the course. I know to order me an extra bracket and have a few, but yeah, dude, it's an all fun. I mean, it means you're making memories, because I had to pull my buddy home on the side by side. He was on the tractor. He's never really been on one. I was like, now the brake's not. It's on it's on the right. And he was like not paying attention at all. Didn't we come off that hill and he almost passed me? He had a toe strap on him. I wish I've got a video of it. His eyes are as big as it could be. So no, it's fun, man. I'm excited. We've got a lot of big stuff planned this year. I know you were going to try to shoot up, Cade, and we decided to wait until next year for the Velvet Hunt.
Right.
but still open invite for you to shoot up and do some, main season hunting if you want to. We'll get after them, and then we got some big plans for turkey. So it's just you can't be upset with a broke apart when you're looking,
Right.
for the plans we have
Yeah,
planned. So
For sure.
absolutely.
Well,
Especially when you deal with a lot of older equipment. That's probably my biggest thing is like,
yep,
I'll go use something that's, grandpa's or just been around for years and nobody's used it, but they think back then they couldn't have tore it up as much as I would. But I'm thinking, man, this is like 20 to 30 or 40 years old. Like,
yep.
I mean, give me a little bit of a break.
Yeah, give me some
Right.
slack. Yeah.
Right.
But anybody listening in podcast land, hit us with that rate and review, YouTube, like and subscribe, the whole 9 yards. We actually do have a Blue River bow hunting store now on it's all on our socials. You can find it in there. We got t-shirts, stickers, that sort of thing. It's kind of our first attempt diving in and all of that. But we'll see you again here next week for episode 127.